Fala galera, tudo bem com vocês? No vídeo de hoje eu vou bater um papo com Ben Young, diretor de Hounds of Love, um filmaço que retrata muito bem a violência contra a mulher, não só a violência física, como também a violência psicológica, né? E a gente pode ver no filme, eu já fiz um vídeo também aqui no canal sobre esse filme, que não apenas a protagonista do filme é vítima dessa violência, mas também as demais mulheres ali, personagens que também são representadas no filme. Então galera, bora curtir o papo com esse cara que é um gênio. Achei o trabalho dele fantástico e recomendo muito esse filme para quem ainda não teve a chance de ver.
Hey, love. Do you want a lift?
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, let's jump in. Yeah, I read your little diary. Your mum wouldn't let you out, so you snuck out, didn't you? She's probably not even looking for you.
You think she's prettier than me? Come on, Evie. You're my queen. I'd die without you.
He doesn't love you. He just uses you.
We usually do it together. There is just something about you that makes me want you all to myself. Let's go in there and have a little bit of fun.
All right, so we're here with Ben Young today. He's the director of Hounds of Love, and we're going to talk a little bit about this movie and his work as a director. So thanks so much for being here today, Ben.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
So let me ask you the basic question that I have. How is your relationship with horror? Do you actually, when you did the Hounds of Love, did you mean to make it a horror movie or...
No, I didn't. That's a really good question. I had no idea I was making a horror movie until I saw the reviews. I always thought I was making a crime thriller, and so it was, really interesting to me to see that it kind of got pigeonholed as a horror film. And I'm not sure that was actually the best thing for the movie, because it's not a horror movie in the traditional sense, that it's not a lot of blood and there's not a lot of guts and it's not even very violent. And so I feel like a lot of people who went there expecting a traditional horror were perhaps put off. So yeah, but I do love horror movies. I just didn't think I was making one in that particular instance.
And to be honest with you, I didn't see it as a horror movie. I see it the same way as you, as a thriller, some bit of drama, and with different layers. And in my opinion, it depicts the violence against women in so many different ways.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, that was the plan. We were trying to make something that was, the whole movie came about from my frustrations as somebody who likes to watch horror movies and thriller movies. I just found that I wasn't liking any of the ones that were available, because they were either just violent with no tension, or they were all just or they were boring. So I wanted to try and really just make the kind of movie that I was wishing there was more of.
And one thing that I would like to ask you, there's a lot of visual language going on without, if you are able to read between the lines and not what just the characters are saying. Did you get what you were expecting from that? Because it depends a lot on the audience being able to read it. I think it was great, but how was your feeling based on the reception of this by the audience?
Oh, look, I was thrilled with the reception of the movie, because we made it We made it for very little money, about 1.6 million Australian. And we made it on a grant, which is, I'm West Australian, and every year the West Australian government gives one new filmmaker $750,000 to go towards their first movie. Historically, those movies don't usually do very well. They normally, are a great stepping stone for the director to get their second project off the ground or begin to get a job directing television. But before mine, there'd only been one that had kind of made a bit of an international splash, and that was These Final Hours. And so I wasn't expecting much from the movie. I was just hoping that it might get me in the doors of, some agents and some producers and potentially make another one. And so the fact that it got into the Venice Film Festival and was so generously reviewed there by Variety and Playlist and Hollywood Reporter and all of those guys meant that I had a lot of Hollywood agents come and knocking on my door wanting to represent me. And so the reception was fantastic. And it was more than I could have ever hoped. And the good news is I think that most of the reviews got what the movie was supposed to be, and they got that it wasn't supposed to just be a violent horror movie, but got that it was really talking about issues of domestic violence and control and the relationships between men and women.
Yes, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I've seen a lot of male chauvinism in the movie, and not just with Evelyn, but also with Vicky's mother. And she was able to get rid of it. She just moved away, and then she's living her life. But about Evelyn, I was very, I would say, divided because I wasn't know if I should consider her a villain or a victim. I think that both.
I think so too. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. How hard was it for you to balance that in a way that you could make the audience have the image that you wanted from Evelyn?
It was really hard, and I'll tell you something that I don't know if I've ever said before in an interview, but the first draft of the script was Evelyn's story, but all of the financiers just said you can't ask an audience to sympathize with a female serial killer. You need to rewrite the movie from Vicky's point of view. And so I did, but then Emma Booth, who played Evelyn, was such a terrific actor and got all of the nuance so right that when we got into the edit suite, we were able to make it more about Evelyn than we actually intended on doing. So it was a very difficult balance, very, very almost impossible in the stages of development to convince anybody that we could pull it off. But yeah, I just had a really terrific actor who was able to get the nuance. And so, yeah.
That being your first movie as a director, how challenged did you feel when you were making this movie?
A lot, but it was my first movie, but I had made 8 short films and I directed three kids TV series, and I directed like 35 music videos and who knows how many TV commercials as well. So while it was my first movie, it wasn't my first rodeo. And I was very fortunate in the sense that because the city that I live in is really small and doesn't have much of a film industry, I knew the entire crew. I'd been working with them for years and years, and the DP and I had worked together on countless things. And Emma Booth, who plays Evelyn, has been one of my best friends for 20 years. And so I knew her really well going into it. So I was hugely challenged, but the thing that challenged me most was just the pressure that I put on myself. So because I just didn't know if I knew how to make a movie, but I knew that whatever I shot was going to cut together because I'd just done it so many times in other things. Yeah. How did you end up finding the movie? How did you hear about it?
There's some YouTube channels in Brazil that were commenting about it, but I found it when I was I was specifically searching in Google for the best indie movies about horror. And what caught my attention was that it didn't sound like horror, but the story sounded a lot interesting. So I didn't even watch the trailer. I was like, I need to see this movie. So I went to Shudder, and there it was. So I watched it, and I really loved how you have multiple layers, maybe multiple biases, and how you have Vicky that is like the protagonist, but at the same time, she looks just like a supporting character for Evelyn.
Yep.
And that's, really excited me. I really loved the way that you were able to tell that story.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. It was very difficult to try and make it Vicky's movie because, your protagonist is usually the character who changes the most over the course of the story. And they're usually the one that is most active in trying to achieve a goal. And it's very difficult to keep a character active when she's chained to a bed for 80% of the movie. So it was very hard to write. And I think, it was because of that reason that in the edit, it more and more became Evelyn's movie to the point where I think you could probably call it a dual protagonist story.
So Evelyn was, she seemed to do these things not because she feels any kind of pleasure by doing that, but just to please John and make sure that he loves her, right? So
absolutely. So the whole idea for the movie came from my mum writes crime fiction. She writes books, and I was at her house one day and she had this just pile of crime books on her table. And I said, what are you doing with those? And she went, I don't need them anymore, so I'm going to throw them away unless you want any. And so I found one in there that was called Why Women Kill or something like that. And I thought, I don't actually know about this, so I'll read the book. And what I found so interesting is reading it, I gained an understanding that women kill for completely different reasons to men. Like often men will kill through rage or spite, but if they commit serial murder, it's almost always because of sexual gratification. Whereas women do develop a perversion of virtue where they're able to convince themselves that they are killing to make the world a better place. So often in the book that I read anyway, the women who were committing murder in there were either committing it against children, their own children, because they felt that the world was such a horrible place that their kids would be better off, not in this world. Or if they were killing strangers, they were usually doing it to placate a man. They were not doing it for their own sexual gratification. And so in Evelyn's case, she, the character is a severely broken individual who John, who's a stereotypical psychopath, has swept up and built up and made her completely codependent on him. To the point of he has manipulated her to the point where she is willing to commit murder to placate him and keep him happy.
Yeah, and you know what? That I think it was it caught my attention. It is the fact that if you look at the man that's going that's pursuing John for getting his money, so. The first time I've seen it, I was like, okay, so John's a psychopath. He's just going to, I don't know. I was expecting to see John like showing how mad or how crazy, how badass he is, but actually he seemed really fragile when confronted by a man, and that was really great in the movie, so that we can actually see that that guy is a coward.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you got that, because when I had a screening once in Australia, in Sydney, and someone in the audience asked a very strange question. And they said, if you could cut one scene out of the movie, what would it be? And I said, well, I wouldn't cut any out because, it's an independent film, so it's a director's cut. It's as I wanted it to be. And she said, I don't think that you need the scene where John gets confronted by the drug dealer guy outside the shop. And I said, well, you absolutely do, because that's what made him who he is. John's character is a classic coward and a classic perpetrator of domestic violence. He's somebody who has absolutely no power in the real world and no control over his own life. And so he picks on the weak. And so those four walls that he has in his house are it's the only place in the world where he has any kind of power. And so that was the point in that scene. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
I didn't see in the movie Evelyn any differently than Vicky, because they were both prisoners.
Yeah.
either physical or psychological. So
Yep.
I think that you depicted very, very well. Yeah. So and then you've had I didn't see it yet. It's on my watch list, but I've seen you have another movie, The Extinction.
Yeah, that's an interesting movie. I didn't write that one. That one was that one came to me after Hounds of Love, and it was a big studio movie. So that was I shot that in Belgrade, Serbia in 2017, and then it was released on Netflix, I think, at the end of 2018, and that has got, you'd never even know that they were by the same filmmaker because they're chalk and cheese. Extinction is a lollipop fluff kind of action movie, whereas Hounds of Love is more of a a thinking person's film. I'd like to think, but I've just shot another movie in Atlanta, Georgia, United States, that I did at the end of last year, and I'm just in post-production for that now, and that is called Where All Light Tends to Go, with Billy Bob Thornton and Robin Wright, and I think that is more in line with Hounds of Love, and so if people liked Hounds of Love, hopefully maybe they'll like this new one.
Certainly, I'm gonna be looking for that for sure.
Oh, good.
As soon as it's released, and then maybe we can definitely have another talk about that when.
Sure. It's more of a crime drama than it's a straight crime drama. It's not nearly as confronting or tense as Hounds of Love, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. Excited to see that. And you also directed a couple of episodes for the Clickbait, right? That's trending on Netflix.
Yep. So Clickbait is on Netflix, and I directed episodes 5 and 6, and that was a really fun show to work on because every episode is from a different character's point of view, and so the wonderful showrunner Tony Ayres really gave us a freedom in the way that we approach that show that you don't normally get as a director in television, because normally when you're doing TV, you have to stick to a very rigid style that has been set by the first director, so the show feels like it's all the same show. But in Clickbait, we were kind of given free rein and allowed to do what we want, and so that was a very good, fun show to direct.
Oh, that's great, and I'm really happy to see that you are getting more and more things out, because your directing style is really great. I really loved it, and
oh, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. I'd like to be getting even more out.
And you should enroll your movies for the festivals in Brazil as well.
Yeah. Well, what's the biggest festival in Brazil?
So we do have the city I live in. It's in the south of Brazil. That's called Porto Alegre. There is a festival here that's Fantaspoa. That's the largest, the biggest festival for fantastic movies.
Oh, great!
In Latin America. So it is great if someday you want to enroll for that.
Yeah, I'll tell the producers to enter the new one into it.
So I think that those were the questions that I had. That was really faster than I was expecting. But I guess we have. I could feel that I understood the film the same way as you meant it to be. So I'm glad.
So thank you for that. You definitely got it. It's the thing that I wanted to say is I'm glad that you appreciated that there wasn't a lot of violence in the movie. But I actually think that made the film scarier, because what the audience imagines is happening is so much worse than anything that I could get away with showing. And so, that's a little trick for any budding filmmakers out there. If you want to really make your audience squirm, imply something is going to happen, but don't show it. But just show the person afterwards. And it always affects audiences more than what you show.
One thing I like to mention is that, and that's something else, because even though there is not so much of a violence, but if you take the last part of the movie where Vicky's mom is shouting for her in the middle of the street, and all of that action is happening, but it happens so slowly, not in a bad way, but in a way that you get tense, and you're like, wow, what's gonna happen, and this was more impacting to me than any kind of gore or any other kind of horror scene that you could have put on it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted that last part to play out as close to real time as possible because, you know, like in movies, they often montage stuff. But I really just wanted to try and put the audience in Vicky and Evelyn's shoes as much as possible. And, you know, in a moment like that, if you were experiencing that in real life, it would feel like it was taking forever. And so I'm glad that it felt slow for you because that was really the intention.
Yeah, that was great. And I think that these elements that you had, all of these small ones together, they were very, very powerful. And I really loved the way that I was able to get the whole message that was intended by the movie.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right, so Ben, if you had any message that you'd like to leave for the Brazilian fans, and I can tell you that there's a lot of Brazilian people that loves your movie.
Thank you.
What would you tell?
Oh, well, firstly, I'd ask them to spread the word because it's a tiny little movie, and so I'm thrilled that anyone in Brazil even has access to it because it got such a small distribution. And you know, most people in Australia have never even heard of it, even though it's an Australian movie. So, firstly, thank you all very much for watching it and for all the very generous words. And I suppose if I have any message, it would be to anyone who's trying to make films. That is, hurry up and fail. Hounds of Love was the 11th feature film script that I wrote, and it was the first one that got made. And the best people aren't the people who get the opportunity to make movies. It's the people who want to make movies the most and who just are the most resilient and just keep doing it despite being told no. They just get up and they keep doing it. So just keep doing that if you want to make films.
Oh, thanks a lot, Ben. So it was really a pleasure talking to you. I'm looking forward.
Thank you. You asked really great questions. I do a lot of these, and a lot of people don't think about the questions as much as you obviously did. And so I really appreciate you going to that effort.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So Ben, really appreciate your participation, and wish you to have a nice week. And you know, if there's anything that I can do for you ever, just don't hesitate to ask me on Instagram.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, once you get the podcast up, if you send it to me, I'll share it on all of my socials. So hopefully you get some Australian listeners out of it.
I will, for sure.
Great.
Se você gostou desse papo, já deixa seu like aí no vídeo, deixa seus comentários, se inscreve no canal, segue a gente lá no Instagram, @área43terror, e pode ficar à vontade para sugerir novos conteúdos. É isso aí, galera. Muito obrigado e até a próxima.